Thank you very much for those lovely refreshments. Chocolate biscuits are always popular with me. This session is all about communication. And there are two opportunities I want to mention. I've got the permission of the founder to mention these before we start. One is that in September next year, the Africa Farm Management Association, which is about the same age as Penha, is holding its congress that it holds every other year. It's going to be in Rwanda. It's an opportunity to present papers. So I want to challenge people here. Maybe you want to communicate your research or your current development activities. It's a very practical sort of organisation and a good place to show your face and get involved with. The second thing is the Tropical Agriculture Association International, of which I was the chairman until 2 years ago. I'm still involved as a member, was a fellow actually, but John Morton, Professor John Morton, gave one of our lectures there. We are about, well, it depends where you start, either 102 years old or 45 years old. But we have a journal called Agriculture for Development, and Zeri has produced a paper in there, and it will be another opportunity and membership. Have a look at the website, www.taai.org. So we've got an international membership, and it would be lovely to have new members. And it's an opportunity, a place where I'd like to see Penha's name further aired. Now, we're here to actually celebrate the launching of this book. And it's focusing mainly on Ethiopia, but Africa as a whole has about 268 million pastoralists. Ethiopia reckons about 12% of its population are pastoralists or agro-pastoralists, semi-sedentary, semi-farming pastoralists. And this is based on a study which was funded through the Ethiopian government, and it's all about social protection schemes in various parts of the Horn of Africa, but particularly based in Ethiopia. And those of us who are of an ancient birth date, like me, remember the 70s and 80s food for work schemes. There are various approaches of providing vouchers for different activities which are beneficial towards the goal. And our friends here are going to talk about this book, but the good news is, and the reason I'm waving it, I've already got a copy. I'm going to return this to the bookstall outside, and for a mere £20, you can get your own copy. And I guarantee it will send you to sleep in no time, because I was the reviewer of this book. But it's a really good book. But it's written by 17 professional authors, specialists, and it should be read chapter by chapter. It's not a sort of book you read at a sitting. It's not meant to be. I hope you agree with that. So it's to be read and digested and appreciated. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over. I think, Zeri, you're going to speak first. Is that right?
This better. Yes. Okay. Well, when I'm sitting here next to my old teacher, I get a bit scared. I remember he was my teacher long time ago at the Royal Agricultural College. So whenever I see him, I just tremble. My teacher. May I also correct my dear teacher now on a couple of things. Number one is this study was funded by the Dutch. The Dutch like us a lot, They like this Horn of Africa idea, Greater Horn, So they and also interested genuinely on this marginalized communities, and therefore I would like to credit that the Netherlands Organization for Scientific Research. This is the research funded by them. And the Ethiopia connection is very important because Ethiopia has one of the largest social protection programs in the continent, funded by the World Bank. Correct me, those who know about Ethiopia. I think the World Bank was funding that PCMP, what we call Productive Safety Net Program, for many years. So it's one of the. So I would like to correct my dear guru, you know, which is a shame for me to do that, but I have to do that. Sorry, I mean it implied that the Ethiopian government funded. That's why I'm reacting. I mean that's why I'm trying to correct. You know, it's very important correction. So politically, it's very important connection. He put me in trouble. I wish our government could fund the research, but I don't think. So, as you can see, the four institutions on the cover. One is Adigrat University in the Tigray region. And then we have the development planning unit, UCL, where I worked for many years. And then Samara University, this is one of the pastoralist institutions, university in the land of the Afar. And then Penha. So those are the four partners, institutional partners, as far as the study goes. But we say a bit more in detail in a minute. There are also others, Addis Ababa University and others I'm going to mention in a minute. So when you, and my colleague Barakat is one of the authors, so what I'll try to do now is just to give you a bit of a feel of what the bit of the background, you know, about the book. Microphone, yes. The background to the study, and the reason why we focus on the Afar pastoralist peoples is because we want to see the impact of the social protection program, particularly on the nomadic and pastoralist community. That was our interest. Did it have an impact positively or negatively? And we concentrate on the Afar because they are one of the marginalized communities in the Horn generally, and also in Ethiopia. They're a cross-border group on both the Eritrean and the Ethiopian side. So we're particularly interested looking at the impact of social protection program, what we call the PCMP. Was it, you know, productive? Was it useful to them? How did it work, etc., etc.? So I'll say something about that, and then how it started. Why do we choose the Afar, as I said, the safety net? And there is a reason. And then sum up the main findings of the research, because the book was based on the research we did. You know, we developed the research reports, the advocacy, to a book like this. We brought authors from various institutions. And then the evolution itself, why did we turn the research paper into a book, and the rationale behind that? Because it'd be a shame to have done the research and not publish it. I mean, we are motivated to publish it as a book and have it available more widely. That's really and then I think I want to skip the regional bit, which the map is there. You can forget that. Let's move forward. I must like that map, you know. It's a good map, ecological map, political as well as ecological. So the productive safeness in Ethiopia started we call it PCMP in 2005 in the highland regions, and that's why we had this logic of looking at how did it impact on the lowland pastoral areas. That's really our interest, you know, to see the gap. And in the case of Ethiopia, it covered up to 10 million across many of the regions in the country. And although it started earlier in the highland areas, I think in the lowland pastoral regions, in the Somalia region and the Afar region, it started a bit late. I think it's a few years late because of the implementation and the need to organize it in a certain way. Then I think what we wanted to do was we want to take up the Afar as a case, the region of the pastoral. This is one of the remote areas, one of the marginalized parts of the country, where the benefits of the social protection program did not have a major impact. So in a way, we want to have a critical discussion around that. Why is it that in some of the highland areas, the productive safety net was effective, impactful? You know, you can measure that when we compare some of the highland areas. But what happened in the one of the fundamental things we found, and this is, we criticize ourselves as sedentary. I think it was designed around people who thought of a sedentary way of life, you know. So it did not accommodate the sort of mobility, the flexibility, which are very important in the pastoral areas. So we looked at why is it, why was it not designed according to the concept of mobility and inclusion as well, because those particular groups, you know, have particular contexts. And so we looked at, and then we also thought that we want to engage with a number of Ethiopia at that time had such an emerging institution, it's universities in many parts of the country, So there's an attraction that you can work with those universities at the local level. It's an opportunity. One of those universities was the Samara University in the Afar region itself, for the first one, So we decided to look at to work in partnership. So what we're trying to do is we got two universities, which are at the Grat University and at Addis Ababa University, which is also well established, and then the Samara University in Afar region, and UCL, of course, I was represented by, because I've been working with UCL. So the key objectives at the time were really that we want to evaluate the effectiveness of this program. How effective is it in terms of its impact on poverty reduction, food security, and livelihood in the Afar region? We're critically looking at it. And then also to investigate whether this implementation in the Afar area, be it on a delayed fashion, how did it secure any food insecurity efforts, and also poverty reduction, its impact on poverty reduction. To try to understand and evaluate whether the nomadism, pastoralism actually had institutions, social institutions within the community who could be incorporated in the livelihood, in the PCMP and Afar, because they have their way of surviving as well. This government intervention in any way include the survival strategies of these communities, for example. That was one of our inquiry. And also to assess the extreme weather conditions, because in the lowland Afar region is the environment. If you want to have a taste of hell, you should go there. I was talking about 50 centigrade of climate, so hot, it becomes impossible. We used to work there, so I have some experience. The highland areas are probably much more comfortable. So the PCMP, in fact, did not take into account the seasonality of the weather, for example, and then if you go to the Afar region itself, very briefly, this is the Afar region. It shows you how scattered it is. 270,000 square kilometers, thinly populated, with a population of 1.5 million, scattered over this wide area. Mind you, the place is also rich with potassium and other mineral resources, and that could be also part of the problem, because this place, the area is being grabbed by various investors, so that they can exploit. And my story is, I have seen the Afar themselves being employees of those companies in those areas, abandoning pastoralism, because they clearly saw an advantage in doing that. So the other thing is that environment, as I said, you can see the seasonal mobility and how harsh it is. I'll give you some idea. And then I want to show you some more pictures. Pictures are important sometimes. They say more than talking, So these are the very interesting, what you'd call Morani in herders, like in some parts of East Africa. These are the Afar youngsters, traditional. You got the AK as well, self-protection. You buy, sell a camel and buy weapons. But when I talked to them, this was interesting. The older guys like this aspire at pastoralism as being a viable way of life, They defend it. It's their culture. And when I was talking to these little kids who were walking for a good 3-4 kilometers to go to school, an aeroplane was flying over us, when I just to talk, and then I asked them, what do you want to be? Most of them said, I would like to become a pilot, So it's a lot of aspirational attitudes among these communities, which we don't appreciate sometimes. We need to study the aspirations of the different groups of the generation, like these kids. So I know they were saying, I would like to be a pilot. I want to be. So this is the assumption we had, is they would like to be camel owners. So this is what I was coming from. I thought they would say to me, I want to own 10 camels. So they said, no, I would like to be pilots. So I think we need to take this into the aspirational part of it. And the PRA was very effective. I mean, we had women involved to study the field work. And then once we have done that, I can now sum up the main findings and the key limitations. Okay, the PCMP, the Productive Safety Net Program, is seasonally determined, But the problem then is the season for the pastoralists and the farmers is different. For example, if you take the highlands, the rainy season is between May, June, July time, In the pastoral areas could be a different season. So the PCMP activities were sort of tailored around a highland perception of the season, not in the lowland, the kind of, for example, the seasonality. Afar environment becomes impossible to survive in during the months of the summer, what we call summer. June, July, August, September, it becomes so hot and it's impossible to do anything. So the seasonality we found out was for the productive safety net was tailored towards highland farmers, and the January, June being the time where you can support the farmers to get ready for the farming season, which is July, August, September, So that's what I'm trying to say. Seasonality was an issue, and obviously I'm repeating myself, but in general, the social protection safety net was not tailored to this population. For example, public works, for the farmers is good. They have a tradition, farming tradition, so they take up those kind of irrigation and other activities which are suited in highland conditions, because the farmers have some experience. In the lowland areas, perhaps, you have to think differently. The priorities may be different. Conservation tools they were provided to these pastoralist communities, but they are not familiar with farming, so why do you give them those tools? You're probably the wrong tools. And then the sustainability of their food, for example, it doesn't complement the food aid they were getting. It doesn't complement in helping to build their own assets, as pastoralists. Our PRA findings indicate that there are multiple factors which curtail for realization of the program, because there was not tailored. As I said before, I think the conceptualization of this program was a key issue. It was designed for sedentary, whatever they are, highland or lowland areas, which does not fit into the pattern of the Afar. That was really our main. Economic diversification among the Afar is grown significantly. And the PCMP program did not take into account the diversification of economy among the Afar, because, as I said, some of them have now become urban traders, others has become, merchants, whatever. So those were our. Now, how did we use the outcomes? We had 3 levels of it. Firstly, when we finished the studies, we produced. To be fair to the partners, we produced short reports with the fear of sharing them at the Grat University was a partner institution, but also, more importantly, the Afar themselves, Samara University. So that was the knowledge sharing part of it. And then also to use the same information to gather politicians, parliamentarians, and to share our findings at that level, at the government level, because there were a good number of MPs who are keen to learn what has happened to this program. So we managed to do that. And then once we finished the study, having engaged with policymakers at federal level, community level, we also have to give something back to the Afars themselves. We had local meetings in the settlements. This was only a matter of duty. It's not a favor. And then thank them for all their help. So now I'm finishing now before John asks me to stop talking. Now this is the bigger dream, and Barakat has to say more about this. What we had all that study done, the publicity, etc. And now we said, what do we do with this? What's the point of all this research unless we are able to document it and learn some lessons, draw some lessons for Africa, for sub-Saharan Africa, based on the Ethiopian experience? Because this was one of the largest programs, so obviously there were lessons, and we were committed enough, and nobody was funding us, so we mobilized a good number of researchers who are not directly involved in the field research, but people who have knowledge about social protection from the other universities, for example, Addis Ababa University and others. We brought in 11 authors, and I'm happy to say we are all 95, 98% were from the region. Is that okay to say? How is it? Indigenate, you know? Our own. Yes. I wanted to confirm it. Anyway, seriously, I mean, this was a deliberate plan, you know. We want to have it our own. Okay, we don't mind the editing bit here and there, but actually the ownership of it, you know. But English is not our mother tongue, so sometimes we have difficulties with it. So, but the ownership of the whole thing. But having said that, we are so grateful to two friends, our real dear friend Nicole Kenton, who worked with the IID for many years. Her daughter is here, whether she is here. She was one of the key authors as well, and basically all the other. John of course is also John Morton, John Livingston, the Ugandan. He was one of the authors. He was all from the region, you know. I'm happy to say that because it's also been quite an experience building to work together with institutions at various levels, the government, and also to think of a sub-Saharan context. So therefore, now what we did, we widened the scope of the book, not only to cover Ethiopia but look at other experiences. And then we started to see what is the value of this. In fact, in terms of value addition, you know, the research has a multidisciplinary approach to the whole thing. We are not looking at from a social but from various angles, you know, economic, social, policy aspects. And that we could say the team composition is important because we did a great deal of literature review from other countries, you know, when we put this together. So it was not simply based on the Ethiopian experience, but it drew from other sub-Saharan contexts as well. And also I think I have to add that the interactions, we stress the highland-lowland interactions because sometimes, you know, as you know, many of you, in the Horn, there is a very close interaction between lowland communities and highland. This is not recognized. So in our case, having done this study, we recognize, for instance, the Tigrayan highland farmers are closely connected with the Afar in these lowland areas. You could say the same about the other parts of the country. So that was not a rocket science, but we realized that this highland-lowland interaction should be appreciated because people exchange goods and services, and etc., although they may be culturally very different. COVID is an issue. We looked at it. There is a chapter on COVID because we cannot avoid that. Now, to conclude, really, I would like to say the authors also recognize within the social protection there is lack of understanding of the informal social protection within these communities. There was an assumption that thought of that, and we dug deep into that and say, oh my God, the informal systems of social protection should be valued highly. And then we try to include elements in our critique, if you like, in this book. Also, we recognize the women and youth, you know, are marginalized still in these communities. We are not in the community we came across, and this is also true, by the way. The marginalization of youth and women is also very true in the highland areas. This is a sort of Abrahamic context. So I think we have to understand it in that. So it's not necessarily that the marginalization is only for the women in the highlands. It's a cultural thing which is very deeply rooted for centuries. So we have to appreciate. And lastly, we are also warning that, you know, this hegemony against the lowlanders, you know, that there are people kind of with difficulties, far from the truth. In fact, economically they contribute positively to our economies. So where is this misconception coming from? I mean, for not being farmers, in fact, they are doing something alternative to the farming system itself. So in a way, we acknowledge that. We give it a lot of credit as an economy, as a way of life as well. On that note, I am done. Before John has got me, and I think I'm just...
Give the man a clap. Thank you. Yes, I mean, you touched on a very big issue there. This book has strengthened the recognition that social protection programs are a good thing, and it does lead into other parts of Africa particularly. But the question is, will the resources be there to fund them in future? And we come back to our friend with her entrepreneurship in London here and elsewhere. And the book review that I wrote for this appeared in Agriculture for Development, where also Zeri wrote a paper about this work. And where also Dr. Christy Peacock, some of you might know Christy Peacock, who used to run Farm Africa, but she started 11 years ago now, SIDAI, which is a local company in East Africa providing veterinary products for livestock producers. And it struck me as I read this that there needs to be more scope for public-private partnerships and engaging the local people in their values and their entrepreneurship. So that might be something we bring out in the discussion. But unless there's a burning question on the specifics of what Zeri has shared, I'm going to pass over to Bereket, who's going to share his details. Okay?
Thank you, John. So it's my pleasure to present my presentation today about social protection, especially with the focus of Sub-Saharan Africa. So initially, this project was mainly for Ethiopia. However, we were saying, let's explore what's going on in the other parts of Africa. So we were trying to see from Mali, Sudan, and also Kenya and southern part of Africa. So we're trying to really learn something from the ongoing interventions at that time. So this chapter came in because of that. So this presentation is based upon the first chapter as well as the 8th chapter of the book, which mainly try to really frame the whole agenda of social protection. So at the beginning, we are going to look at the overview, what's social protection, what kind of interventions are there, the nature of safety net especially, what kind of nexus approach we developed for the research, and also we are going to look what is going to be the trend in the pattern in relation to the safety net across the continent. So basically the first question comes, why social protection? So it is really an avoidable intervention wherever we go. Here in the UK we have a kind of social security. So similarly we have many interventions in Latin America and in Africa as well. So we can look at the level of intervention, but basically there is a need for intervention to support communities because their resilience capacity becomes weak, and then there should be a kind of response. So this new trend of intervention is becoming very common. Instead of just being reactive, we need to be proactive. We need to have a system, institutional and policy systems in place instead of just running after droughts and famine across the Horn of Africa or across Africa. So this is the whole agenda. Instead of just waiting to happen a disaster and react, better to have a system that can really be well prepared and full-fledged to cope with this kind of disasters. So this is the whole agenda. However, sometimes governments also use safety net approaches for gaining political capital. For instance, during the election times in Ethiopia, for instance, the government tried to distribute fertilizers to really gain the support from the farmers. So in Uganda, the same, some kind of interventions there as well. So there are targeted interventions to gain political support, but mainly because of their political agenda. The another is just some development partners trying to really encourage this kind of intervention, saying that we have got this kind of fund, can you really have an intervention that focus on safety net? This happened in Ethiopia as well. When the Ethiopian PSMB started, one of the interviews said that at that time Ethiopia had not good relationship with the West because of the human rights abuses at that time. And the West were refusing to support their budgetary funding system, saying that we cannot really give you fund in cash or in terms of budgetary support. Rather, let's develop some kind of intervention where they can really support in terms of food aid or other kind of interventions. So it could be a kind of homegrown approach, or it could be like an induced program from the West or from the other international development partners. This could be another one. The another intervention could be because of trying to minimize or reduce the gap in inequalities. So governments could also have some kind of long-term approach to the program. In general, we have broadly three kinds of social protection interventions. The first one is consolidated one, which is more of long-term focused with solid institutional capacity and also funding mechanism for that. So this more commonly we can see in the West countries. The another one is the emerging social protection. This is really common among the Latin America countries, especially if you look the before its abolition in Mexico, the Prospera. It was one of the well-known programs across the continent. So we have this kind of interventions as well as a kind of emerging, but having some kind of solidified approach towards safety net. With limited kind of social protection, Ethiopia has mentioned it now, but I believe after having 20 years of experience on this field, I believe Ethiopia could be also on the emerging social protection by now, but I don't see any kind of defining situation to put Ethiopia in that kind of context, but limited in a sense that there is a growing approach toward the safety net, but still it's not really a full-fledged one. In terms of framing the agenda of safety net especially, some countries look at it as a kind of human rights approach. So for instance, Mozambique, it has got in its constitution that every Mozambican has the right to access to this kind of safety nets. So some of them are really supported by legal foundations. The another one is just national development approach. To put, if you are trying to support a family, so you need to link it to the national development, how it can really have multifaceted impact at the global or national level. So this is another approach to that as well. So it can be given as a kind of responsive, but in the context of Ethiopia and now, we can see a kind of regular. This support is continuing for 6 months. So now families are aware that in the next 6 months they have some kind of government support coming in. So they are really well planned in terms of the expectation of the resources to come to the family. So it can be given in cash, in food, in kind of subsidies, vouchers, insurance, also other public works, for instance. It has got really a number of instruments to implement safety net. Some communities in Ethiopia, for instance, they said refused cash. They said we don't need cash to the government, saying that because they believe that cash can be volatile, it can really reduce its purchasing power. So they prefer cash. The Afars, for instance, they said no for cash. So they have their own understanding of getting support. It could be conditional or unconditional. Conditional in a sense that you need to provide some kind of contribution to the program so that you can get the support. For instance, you need to send a child to the school and the government can support you. You need to have your child get vaccinated and then you can have the support. In unconditional situations, it's like across the border it could be because of disasters. Sometimes it could be because lactating women, because of disability, families can have a long-term unconditional support. This another one is the traditional and contemporary safety nets. The contemporary one, we are talking about this government, big multi-million large-scale social assistance. We are talking about PSMP. But traditional one, families can really support each other during difficult times, because of the drought, because of the famine. A single family can support another family by providing or restocking their livestock assets. So it could be also another one. But the modern or contemporary safety net approaches, we witness that to miss this kind of very important indigenous knowledge systems in terms of supporting the communities. The another one is just when you are supporting a family, it cannot be really supporting a family. You are supporting the community, the whole nation. So there is always a link between a single family, supporting a single family, and also looking at the national development goals as well as SDGs. So it's very interlinked. The Another one in terms of PSMP, we are talking about PSMP because one of the biggest interventions in Africa, supported by World Bank, USAID, defeat and others. So it's really one of the biggest one. Yeah. You can see it has been progressing for the last 20 years, 2 decades. So they have really ample experience now, especially with our contribution towards this program, with a niche of looking at pastoral communities. I can see it's really progressing a lot. So now in its fifth phase, now in this last one especially, there is an emphasis to include urban areas as part of the program. The focus was on rural areas. Now it's really also moving to urban areas. So there is always an expanding nature of this intervention. There is another thing that we observed in the Ethiopian case was that there is a lack of coherence among a number of interventionists. We see PSMP1, there is HARP that supports households with asset building. There is another emergency relief, school feed, and other kind of interventionists. But we really didn't see some kind of convergence in terms of their impact on households in the community or at the national level. So that's what we look at, a kind of missing link in terms of really bringing all these interventionists into one and trying to understand their impact. On this research, we developed this framework that's called Pastoralism, Resilience and Social Protection, PRSP, because we want to see this whole agenda from the point of nexus, looking at what are the key elements or factors to really have a long-term impact on the policy agenda in Ethiopia and across the region. So the first one is actors, institutions, and policy design. That is really, when you are thinking about safety nets, we need to think about institutions. We cannot really deliver this one in a vacuum. We need to have very effective institutions that are ready to respond as well as ready to address the long-term ambition of the National Development Plan. So we need also to learn about how institutions can have a synergy and learning process. Recently, I was in Lesotho, southern part of Africa, to do a consultancy work for IOM with my friend Yosef. So when we were asking them about this safety net in Lesotho, they were saying we learned a lot about safety net from Ethiopia's experience about how to use work as a kind of safety net. So it was really good, to share experiences, to share policy transfers among these countries. The another agenda for this intervention really what is making challenging is affordability. Now the Ethiopian government is now contributing about 14% of the program. The 86% is funded by the global development partners. But once they withdraw from this kind of program, what will happen? Can the Ethiopian government sustain this kind of support to the communities? So the affordability issue is really there as a kind of very vexing issue in this agenda. In one of the southern part of Africa, one of the countries asked for further support. They said, the donor said, sorry, we don't have further support, we don't have further budget, you need to run by your own. And the country remains stuck there. So affordability is really one to look at to this problem. Another one is performance and result. We have been looking at the overall program impacts and results, but we don't see really any kind of unit-based performance assessment. In a sense that we need really to have a profile for a family. If we are support this family for some time, we need to really understand what's really improving, what's not improving. So instead of just at program level, we need to have really a family level performance assessment. Because I will mention later on, but in Afar, some of the families have been really on safety net for more than 10 years. So this kind of intervention usually is made to really lift them up from the poverty and then capacitate them, especially the name says productive. We have really the productive element on that kind of program. So we need really understand this kind of performance assessment should really look at household level to see the progress made in every family and household. The last element is the technological advancement. There is a potential to expand and use technological advancement to use in safety nets, especially in Ethiopia. And yeah, so the technological advancement can really assist this program in many ways. Especially the e-payment or e-cash is very important. Within seconds, you can really give a family a cash through this kind of transfers. So technological advancement can really be the future of this program. Ethiopia has started this telebir about 2-3 years ago. So it's now in its trial phase, but in other parts of Africa like Kenya and Tanzania, other parts, we have the M-Pesa, which is really there for a long time. And in Lesotho, I also observed the NISA is like a national information system for safety net and social protection. So families are already on the system. So if there is a disaster or something is happening, it's very easily to trace and then to intervene and support families. So we try to use this kind of framework to in our book so that we can have really an understanding what's going on and what would be also its contribution towards the national development agenda. So in brief, just to see some of the impacts, we can see some of the programs supported the coping mechanism of a family, especially in terms of survival rate, by providing food and improving the consumption smoothing rule or family food level. So this enabled the programs to save lives at least, though we are a bit questioning about their productive elements. However, the center has been on food security, providing food aid. Food aid is like a kind of dead aid, like Dambisa Moyo said. So it's old-fashioned. So we need really to complement food aid with other kind of elements where a family can thrive and also survive and also be out of poverty and support their family members. Yeah, so, and also in terms of intervention, the focus has been on household and family. So there was no any kind of special intervention for use, particularly in terms of the family nutritional value as well. We provide food, but we don't really trace how much nutritional value or impact this brought to the family. So finally, I was trying to really entertain the idea what will happen in the future. So like I mentioned, the digital services can also promote for financial inclusion. That's very important. So this kind of programs in Sub-Saharan Africa can use this kind of technology for smooth and efficient and effective delivery of the programs. So the question is also another one is ownership. Who owns the program? The governments or the development partners or other development countries, development partner countries? So this is another also a question, the ownership question. The trend is also consolidation and systemization of the program. In many ways, in many countries now, you see instead of just as a program, as a kind of solid intervention among the public service system. So the idea should now focus on long term. We need really to live about this short-termism or short-term intervention. We need really to look at the long-term impacts of this kind of interventions. Like I mentioned earlier, it's also important to have alternative source of income to support this kind of intervention instead of just providing or food aid to the families. And finally, the point is just about how we can really share knowledge and learning across the continent. That's very important. So this book is part of that initiative on social protection agenda. Finally, looking at this book, it was really a very nice journey for me to be involved in this work. Also, like Dr. Zara mentioned, that it was really produced by the researchers from the Horn, most of them from the Horn, so it's really important. And the knowledge cooperation was very important as well. So we work across the local, regional, international levels to really produce a very influential policy intervention in Ethiopia and across the region. My only concern is about the colonization of knowledge. This book is really very expensive. It used to be 130 pounds or something for the hard copy. And the publisher said, we can only produce hard copy for 2 years. Sorry, we are not really critical about this kind of deals, no? So they kept for 2 years only hard copy, which was being sold about more than 100 pounds. The idea of this book is for supporting the social protection agenda policy in Africa. So who can really afford this kind of money in Africa, even in the UK? Maybe some people may afford, maybe libraries can afford, but individuals cannot really afford. So sometimes I doubt myself the intention to support African policymaking is there because of this kind of hardness. Finally, we negotiate with the publisher. We got this book on paper-based, about 17, 18 pounds. But it's after long negotiation with them. So that was one thing we tried to do to reduce the cost. But now online, even it's like about 30 pound online to be sold. So it's now we are selling 20 pound this book at the moment. So I prefer these publishers to consider Africa and African researchers and status and to provide least cost books so that the knowledge generated from that region also can benefit the people and then the communities as well as policymakers in that region as well. Thank you so much for listening.
Just specifically on this last point, one fault for the Penha trustees is, in the same way that you might have a bursary fund to assist volunteers, you could have a fund to subsidize the availability of certain publications. I don't know, it's a thought. Both of you have conveyed to us your passion for this work, and thank you for that. This is not just an academic treatise. This is people who really believe in helping the cause. And you've both touched on what we've probably all seen in development in some of the poorest countries, the incredible support networks that exist, especially in rural communities. The trouble is, once you introduce a government venture with loads of money, with a finite period, people say, oh, we can relax, we don't need to do this anymore. And if you're not careful, you can destroy the local system. So what's your response to that, and how can you work together with others to try and have an integrated system, which Bereket's just been talking about? How can you address that?
Yeah. So this question is very critical. We see in Africa having many interventions. Safety net is one of them. Health intervention, educational programs, capacity building, environmental programs. Nowadays, climate change related programs, climate mobility nowadays. So these are the questions that we need also to ask critically, looking at how these kind of programs can be part of the national agenda and also part of the national policy as well as budgetary system, to have a kind of consolidated approach to interventions. Instead of just focusing on one intervention, there should be at national level that to see how each program and the intervention can really add up and contribute towards the development of the country. So this is a very important question. I think we need to work more on institutions, policies, capacities, and also sharing knowledge and practices among these countries and institutions. Thank you.
Have you come across cases in your wider research where people have got X amount of support in year one, 3/4 of X in year two, and in other words, tailing off so that they move from dependence to independence in that way?
Thank you, John. There is a process called graduation. We don't have only graduation at universities. We have graduation also on safety nets. So they say it at some kind of level, they say, okay, now you are able to support your own family, so you are graduated from this program. But sometimes there is a kind of situation where you graduate the family and then they come back as well to the program. If it's not really supported for long term, ensures that they can really support themselves. So there is a way they use graduation, but I'm really critical of this graduation approach as well. Better really support families, but ensure that they shouldn't really come back again to the program, rather than graduating them, saying that we graduated the 50,000 families, and then some of them they come back. So we should really sustain the support so that they don't really come back again to this kind of poverty trap.
Thank you. Right, sir. Yes, please give your name.
I think you do. So my name is James Firebrace. No, I had a question to generalize this discussion and perhaps link it back to the earlier discussion about trends and so on. So I'll start with a comment, which is what I saw in Somaliland during the big droughts, 2016-17, and then again 5 years later. And obviously, I think the comment was made by John Morton that this is an increasing trend of increasingly severe and lengthy droughts. So what I saw happening in a country that hasn't got an official mega safety net like in Ethiopia was a rather differential impact on pastoralists. The larger herd owners got through one way or the other, but the smaller ones didn't. They fell off the end of the system. They ended up in either IDP camps or in urban areas. And then they had two systems of support. One was traditional, as you mentioned, families and so on nearby, but also the diaspora, which I think is a big factor in the Somaliland system. And of course, many of them ended up in IDP camps and had to survive on donor aid, emergency donor aid in this case, and slowly drifted out of them. So I'm just wondering if this may be a future area for Penha, of course, but I wonder if you can comment on countries that haven't got, is my analysis correct, more widely than Somaliland, and B, I guess what is the future for these safety nets, big programs outside of Ethiopia, which is the most developed?
Ethiopia has been the center of excellence actually in this program development. So Somaliland politicians have been going to Ethiopia to learn and gain experience from these big programs. You're right. I mean, the program by itself is still learning from its intervention. There are also issues that whether these programs are inclusive enough or not. Like you said, people in IDPs, refugees, whether refugees are part of this program or these are mainly to the citizens of these countries only. So in terms of intervention, in terms of target group, still is the program has been learning, expanding, like I said, from rural areas to urban areas. Rural poor people in urban areas were forgotten at the beginning. Initially, like the Dr. Dara said, this program started in highlands for the farmers, and then after 4 years, in 2005, it started in urban areas, and later on it's expanded to rural areas, to the pastoralists. Now it moved to urban areas as well now. So it's like expanding from time to time, but always we really ask mobility. People with mobile style of livelihoods should be supported, if we are trying to deliver food for farmers, it's okay. They are settled in one place. You can reach them at any time. But if the families are moving from one place to another place, how can you deliver food aid to them? So there is a way to do it, but we need really to mind always about mobility, human mobility, especially now with climate mobility in focus, which is affecting communities as well as especially pastoralists. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to invite Professor Frey to say a few words very briefly before Big Ben strikes 4 o'clock. It's just up the road, we might hear it, but I don't want to shorten the next session.
Just very briefly at what James was saying, in context of the region, and this is why we keep on and on about stability and reconciliation and, you know, normality. I'm very sorry to say that our region has had some normality, some stability, and then back to that. I think that viciousness, and in a way, as we said earlier, we have been focused on pastoralists for many, many years. And strategically, we are saying, what do we do next? You know, because I think that stability. I mean, okay, the PSMP was developed in a certain context, maybe in terms of stability and other issues. So I think now the challenge we have in the region, I'm very sorry to say that unless this region is stabilized, you know, and ordinary people go back to normal life, that they always done that, you know. I think my fear is this shift and the instability of the region, both political and social turbulence, is, I don't know, sometimes, you know, you wonder how you're going to plan in this situation, you know. And then emergency becomes an issue, unfortunately. Before, I remember when we took some of our students overseas at UCL, I always pushed our department to be close to our region, you know. I did a lot of, you know, we are a good region, we are good, you know, he knows where is Cuba, you know. I mean, I used a bit of propaganda for my region, you know. I got, we have long civilization, was this and that and that. And then we were going to Ethiopia, and this is students, you know, Japanese and others. I asked them to read some stuff, you know, some background. And all they came back was with just the Bob Geldof story, you know, Do They Know It's Christmas? And I said to them, come on, for goodness sake, you know, that's a long time ago. The country is moving forward. And, you know, this is really the stigmatization, which I find very painful, honestly speaking. And I think unless, and look at the Sudan now, it's heartbreaking, you know. How are you going to think about development intervention in that kind of situation? The country is practically, the two armies are about to eat it up alive, you know. And the other countries, I'm also worried, you know. I mean, the fragility, the political squabbles, some of them are nonsense, you know. People could sit down and talk. And I think this is I would say, in the next 5 years, if we combine peace and stability in our region, we can move forward. But the way the status quo goes at the moment is hard, you know. And maybe the story we're talking about is even probably, I mean, the whole story about social protection was carried out in a more positive environment, you know. So this is the question now. How do you stabilize the region? How do you move towards peaceful settlement of disputes?
Yep. Thank you to both of you. I'm going to close it now. You can clap to them. I think what we've heard is that Penha 35 is an organization of the heart as well as the head and as well as the hands, as we saw on the video. All you need to do now is put your hands in your pockets for £20 and you can have your own personal copy signed by these two authors for no extra charge.